Hi, this is Kirslyn with PlantedinPots, and today we're going to be propagating a Monstera or Swiss cheese plant. We're going to be using a few different methods, which include cutting, separating, and also air layering. The different parts of the Monstera are going to be crucial for where you make your cutting. Our stem is going to be this part before the leaf. We have the leaf, of course. The aerial root is going to be those roots that grow off of the nodes and go into the stem. You can see on the plant here, you have this exposed root that's out of the soil. That is an aerial root that grew down and is now producing more roots in the soil. And then you have the node, which is going to be these little things that kind of look like a wart on the plant or a pimple sticking out of the bottom of the stem here. The first method of propagation is going to be the easiest because it involves a part of the stem that already has grown roots and is a little bit established, but it can help clean up your plant. These plants tend to get a little crazy very fast. And it also is a way of sharing your plant, giving it to a friend, or producing a whole new plant that is ready to go right away. We're going to be separating a part of the plant here that is kind of grown away from the mother plant, as you can see. And as I'm trying to get my Monstera to climb this moss pole here, this one is kind of out and about. So we're going to use this one as the example for separating. A few things to remember, no matter which method you are using, is to make sure that your plant is well watered the day before. You don't want to be taking cuttings from a dehydrated plant. You're going to take a cutting or separation from here where the node is, because you need a node for it to survive, is you would take it below here where we have two leaves coming out. With separating, there's a few different ways that you can do this. If your Monstera needs repotting, you can do this during the repotting process, which actually may be a little bit easier. But since I just repotted my Monstera recently and he's working on climbing this pole or trying to, I'm going to do this within the pot. So what I'm going to do is insert my fingers in between the part that I am separating and the main part of the mother plant. As you can see, he's already a little bit away from the larger plant, which is why we chose this one. You're going to get down into the roots and simply start moving it away from the larger plant. You don't want to move too fast because you don't want to snap the roots. You just want to slowly separate them. You'll feel it start to loosen up. And once it does, you can slowly start pulling it out of the soil. Loosen up the dirt around the roots. There's already a good portion of roots on this separated Monstera. With this method of propagation, we're going to put it directly into soil. We don't need to propagate it in water or any other medium since the root system is already well established. The type of soil that you use should be something that is well draining and has some grittiness to it, something with perlite and also some nutrients. Now that we're ready to plant the Monstera separation into its own new home, one thing to remember is that this aerial node was exposed out of the soil when it was in its old home. So when we go to place this in the pot, that part is going to remain outside of the soil. So right there is our line. You don't want to ever place a Monstera too deep into the soil. Once you finish planting your Monstera, you may find that he's a little bit top heavy and uneven. A lot of newly propagated plants are that way. Monsteras have big leaves and not so much at the base at this point. Once they start growing, this will change. In the meantime, you can choose to put some kind of plant support in to hold him upright and prevent him from completely falling over the side. So here we just have a orchid support that we're going to improvise with, and I'm going to simply use a little bit of garden twine and tie him to it while he establishes his roots. If you don't happen to have an orchid stake sitting around, you could use anything that will help support the plant. You could use an actual stake from Home Depot, a stick off of a tree, a coat hanger, chopsticks, anything that will hold your plant up and give it that little bit of extra support that it needs. As far as the garden twine, you could use regular string, regular twine, Velcro, a zip tie, anything that you might have in your everything drawer, catch-all drawer in the kitchen. Gotta take these metal things out, 'cause that's where we're gonna cut. Show you. This is the one I chose. The part that we have selected to make the cutting from is right here. See that pimple? We're going to cut just below this node that's sticking out. That is where the roots will come from. Hopefully the roots will come from once we put it in water. So when we make the cutting, we're going to cut about right here. Around the node, you can see that the stem kind of swells and it has this uneven growth point right there. You need that part to make the propagation work.
Oh my God, what is she doing?
Ready? Da, da, da.
Is that what we want? Is that what we want to give the people?
That's what the people want. We're going to place our scissors right below the node, making sure that we're not snipping any other parts of the plant that don't need to be snipped. Just be careful of that. And you're going to make a clean cut. Ta-da! Now that the cutting is removed from the mom plant, you can see more specifically the node that I was talking about. This is the part that you need to make sure that you have when you make the cutting, because this is where new roots will produce from. We're going to want to use some cinnamon, just regular ground kitchen cinnamon, for the part that we made the cutting from on the mother plant. The cinnamon helps to prevent disease and fungus. It's actually a natural antifungal, so we're just going to put it on the part that we cut from to make sure that the mom plant is not negatively affected by us taking this cutting. When you're ready to put your cutting into the water, you can either choose to use a container that already has leca at the bottom, or you can choose to just use a container with water. I'm choosing to use leca today because I think it gives me a little bit more control over the water level and helps to maintain moisture in the entire plant, even if the water level goes down a little bit. One thing you're going to want to remember if you're propagating in water is that you're going to want to change the water every 3 to 5 days. I always personally use bottled water because chlorine is not very good for the growing plants that are not established. I do use tap water to water the more established adult plants, bottled water or filtered water for the propagating plants. So I'm going to set this there and then simply fill up the container with my water. And let it grow. The last method of propagation that we're going to be doing today is air layering. The materials needed I will list below, but you can either use primarily some cling wrap or press and seal, the bottom part of a Ziploc bag, anything that's going to trap the moisture in, and some wet sphagnum moss. This has been soaking in water to make sure that it locks in extra moisture. I'm going to use the cling wrap just because it's a little bit more versatile. For this method of propagation, we're going to leave the part that we are propagating completely attached to the plant. It is going to use the mother's nutrients to grow new roots, and it also is a lot less risky if you're worried about killing your plant or cutting it and the roots not growing. This part, no risk involved. We're leaving it completely attached, no separation, no cutting involved until later on. The part that we have selected for the propagating has this node here. We're simply going to take the cling wrap, or press and seal wrap, whatever you have laying around, and some wet sphagnum moss into the wrap. And then we are going to put the node in there and wrap this cling wrap around the plant. The reason why you want to make sure that it's wet prior to doing this is that is how all the moisture is going to stay in there. If you don't soak the sphagnum moss beforehand, it's going to dry out a lot more quickly, and you're going to end up having to unwrap it and moisten it more frequently than if you just soak it before. With this method, you're going to want to make sure that this node here is completely covered as best you can with the sphagnum moss before starting to wrap the cling wrap around the plant. After you wrap it, you can then choose to use something like garden twine again, or zip ties, Velcro, anything that you have laying around the house to hold this saran wrap in. You don't want to make it too difficult to get it off in case you need to add water throughout the weeks that you're going to leave it wrapped. I've made sure to enclose the bottom the best I can to hold that moisture in. Now we are going to simply fold the top around the sphagnum moss before we apply our ties. Good news is the Monstera or Swiss cheese plant is rather hardy, so me moving it around hopefully won't kill it. Somebody knock on wood for me. I'm going to be using garden twine to tie the bottom and secure it, holding as much moisture in as possible. And another tie at the top. You want to make sure to use something that is easily removable to add water as you let this propagate. Now, once the roots start growing in there, and you can check it every week or so, it's probably going to need a couple of weeks. That is when we will make the cutting below the roots and then plant it directly into soil. When you go to plant this, you can leave some of the sphagnum moss with the roots in the soil. It'll just help hold some moisture while it's acclimating to its new environment. There you go. We're just going to leave that attached to the mother plant so it doesn't cause any more trauma to the new propagation or the mother plant. Like I said, that's a lot less risky. You don't have to chop your plant up in hopes that it'll maybe grow roots. This way you can watch and wait till the roots have formed before actually making that cutting. So our third method of propagation is all set for now until the roots grow and we cut it off. So these are the three ways of propagating the Monstera or Swiss cheese plant. You have the air layering here with the sphagnum moss, the separating and putting directly into the pot, and water propagation, where we'll be able to see the roots grow in the water. Whichever way you choose, the Monstera is fairly easy to propagate. The roots grow fast and the plant itself grows fast. So the chances of your mother Monstera plant having somewhere that you can cut off for propagation is very likely within a couple of weeks or months. And now, all thanks to propagation, you have some new plants on the way and a brand new plant here. He is planted in pots. What propagation methods do you use? If there's anything that we might have missed or any tips or tricks you've learned along the way, please remember to leave those in the comments below, start that discussion. We are always looking for new ways to learn and appreciate all of your feedback. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Is that like Darth Vader stuff?
I don't know. It's planted in pot stuff. Leave me alone. Don't judge me.
I would never judge you.
Am I recording? Darn, these are some sick dance moves.
Okay, ready?